Hello and welcome to Pale Reflections, a proud member of the Doof Network where we reflect on Wildbow's most Marian work as it releases. I'm Ruben Morehouse.
And I'm Elliot Diebold.
And we're coming at you live in the Discord 24/7. Here to talk about...
Not yet, but soon, one day.
24. Imagine when we get to chapter 24.7. That'll be a treat. Here to talk about only one chapter today, Elliot.
Yeah.
And you know why that is?
Because we're recording early. Because you're traveling.
Because I'm off to Brisbane for a wedding. And it's wedding season at the moment for my friends and family, seemingly. Because I've been to about 2 or 3 weddings in the past 2 or 3 months. About to go to another one. There's like 3 more before... January or February next year. And then I've been, about 3 different people have reached out to me in the past fortnight saying, hey, what's your address? And what's Penny's last name? And, they didn't say because I'm about to send you a wedding invite, but I'm pretty sure that's what it's going to be.
What else?
So,
yeah.
Yeah.
I think,
lots of weddings.
I think part of that has got to be, like, this is like the post-COVID, like, sort of...
Yeah.
Because I feel like even throughout most of the first half of this year in 2021, we kept like redoing lockdowns, especially here in Australia. So like a lot of people stopped even trying to schedule. Whereas now that Australia's just fully given up on caring about people who are vulnerable to COVID, you can schedule your weddings.
Yeah, that must be it. Yeah, there are some that aren't Australians. I think I've got 2 non-Australian weddings as well. So it can't just be that, but COVID is a global thing, I guess.
Yeah. I guess also just it's that age, right? Like, you're about 28 or so, right? So that's just primo.
20, what am I, 28? I am 28. I was about to say 29, but no, you're right. I'm 28. In my head, I think I'm 30 already. But yeah, I mean, speaking of marriages, there's no better marriage than an arranged political marriage. And that brings us to the chapter we're talking about today.
That could be almost any character in this story. That doesn't narrow it down much at all.
Yeah. Anyway, we're talking about 20 Point D from Jen Ross, Top Boss, which is a great little joke you put in the script. And I don't know if you expected me to read it out or not, but I did.
No, I got to say, I was a little worried when we were doing one of these weeks where we're only covering one chapter because certain chapters suit that more than others. This is absolutely a chapter that I'm happy to cover on its own. Like, there's so much.
Well, you say that, but 20 Point E is still going to be from Jen's perspective.
Yeah, but like this is a good solo chapter. Like, both the chapters last week were solid, but I think if they'd been on their own, it would have been hard to sort of draw everything together for an episode. Whereas this is like, there's so much going on in this. This is already like quickly climbed up the list of my favorite chapters. There's so much going on. It's so chaotic. There's so much petty bullshit. I love the POV. We're going to talk about that a lot. Like, I just love it.
Yeah. Well, let's get into it. It is a very fun one. It starts with Jen getting screamed and really not staying on top of what's going on around her.
Yeah, like, I love the way this chapter really throws us into the deep end. Like, the world is going fucking bananas, both because Jen is getting infected by this madness, but also, like, parts of it are real. Like, parts of it is she sees Lucy, and then, like, all of the power lines in the town are, like, leaking flesh and shit.
July. Yeah.
It's like, oh, like, so I love that. It's like being on this really bad acid trip, also while a bunch of magical explosions are going on around you, and it just like compounds. Like, it's just such a nightmare.
Yeah. And we don't know who the POV character is for a little bit. We know it's someone in the compound, but I don't think the name Jen is said until maybe like 7 or 8 paragraphs in.
Yeah, I thought it was Jillian for a bit, actually. I just assumed Jillian, and then it took me a while to realize I was wrong, and it was actually Jen.
Yeah, I thought we were going to get a Negateer interlude. But yeah, like, it's just chaos, and I love it.
Yeah, and it also is great because then it leads into, like, as Verona appears in the chapter, there's this like really fun comedy where Jen is just absolutely losing her fucking mind, like, quite literally, and Verona's just there like, can you chill, please?
Chillax,
And like,
yeah.
I love it because we've seen this start from Verona's perspective, so we know how it was kind of like, oh, this is annoying. But like now we're in Jen's perspective, you can see why Jen is just completely falling apart, and so it lets you like you get a lot more out of that comedy when we're kind of seeing it from Jen's perspective, and it's just like Verona's cavalierness at this point just like grates on you because you like know the world is falling apart around us. Like she thinks her
Mm.
daughter is dead, and Verona's like, "Stop stressing, bro." Like it's just so funny.
Yeah, I think it's nice how she's panicking and she starts to crawl away, and then she sees the foreign practitioner crouched over Gilly and like freaks out and crawls over and throws herself on top of Gilly or Gilly, I guess, to protect her. I think that's just such a nice, like even in her madness, she cares about her daughter, which is, I guess, nice
Well, yes. I mean,
in her own
being
way.
being not protective of her daughter is not Jen's problem, right? Like
Yeah,
it's the
true.
overprotectiveness that's actually the problem. But yeah, you mentioned the foreign practitioner line. I wanted to bring that up too because I love how something that's really fun that you can do with this madness that's infected Jen is we get this like really raw, unfiltered kind of version of her worldview because it's like the higher parts of her brain are almost what seems to have mostly shut down. So there's no filter, there's no like decoration or like thought control. So it's kind of like, you know, how people say, you know, you say what you really mean when you're drunk or that sort of thing. Like it feels like a version of that, where like the fact that her baseline when she can't really think is to call Verona the foreign practitioner really does set the stage for how she's going to treat Verona for the rest of the chapter. Like it's this madness thing is actually Wildbow manages to use it as like a really cool way to immediately sort of set a lot of the tone of who Jen is at her core
Mm,
because we
mm,
strip away all the bullshit to start. It's really
yeah.
clever.
Yeah, no, it's good. It's I wish we could see every character introduced through madness.
Yeah.
uh but yeah, so Jen regains her senses and makes no sense as she tells Verona what to do. Really doesn't have any good plans here.
No, there's moments where I questioned whether the rune was in fact working. Like, are we sure? Are we sure her sanity has been restored?
um but I do love, obviously, the star of this part of the chapter is the interactions between Jen and Verona and how they're
Yeah.
just so they just so are opposites in all the most hilarious ways.
I mean, Jen definitely borders on British stuff a lot, and Verona is just everything Jen hates about like because we'll talk about it to death, but yeah, like Jen is really calcified on all these opinions about what children should and shouldn't be, and
Calcified,
Verona
yeah, exactly.
it's just the opposite. And yeah, like
Yeah,
they're just perfect foils for each other.
yeah, they're very funny. I love the bit where Verona trails off halfway through a sentence when it's the perfect spot for a like flame blast or something, and then nothing happens, and Jen says, "This isn't a game, and I don't know why you all insist on treating it like one," which is a fair criticism of Verona, but
Yeah. Well, and like that interaction you sort of mentioned is like part of a bit where Verona is like, here, take the rune that I've given you and like spread it to everyone else, help protect everyone else. And Jen is like, that's going to cost power. I can't do that. You do it. Which is first of all, so she's just like volunteering Verona to pay for all this because she can't afford it. And then she's like, also, we'll go fight them. And so Verona makes the very valid point of if you can't afford to do this rune, what is your plan for fighting this shit? And Jen just sort of is like, this isn't a game. Stop treating it like one. And like just it's the same thing we saw with the Belanger guy when Lucy outlogicked him last week. It's just like when you corner a Belanger in an argument, they just sort of are like, "Do as you're told," just sort of fail to live up to the fact that they've been outthought. Um,
mm,
and yeah, we'll talk about Jen so much, but the fact that she emulates the male Bellinger's behavior that we saw is very true to who she is. That she's so good at becoming everything that she hates.
yeah, um, yeah, I do love the vibe of augurs. Just, I mean, I didn't really have
Yeah.
this in my notes, but it just kind of permeates this entire chapter. they're
Yes.
so annoying and also so fun to be around, you know?
Yeah, yeah, exactly like Alexander was too, in a lot of ways. Um, but yeah, like I guess Jen just like she oozes that vibe, and I think she even just outright does it. Where like Jen has that vibe of like, when a kid asks why should I do that, she's like because I said so, which is just like a real pet peeve of mine in terms of parenting. Like I hate it when parents do that. Um,
Mm.
and just that really sets the stage for how much you're like, oh, Jen and Verona are going to hate each other, and that really culminates in that part where Jen threatens to like hit Jillian, and then also she threatens to hit Verona, and you're just like, oh, Verona, do it, like Verona, just disable her, just like take the rune off, dude. Like she's not worth it.
Yeah.
Um, oh yeah, also
Yeah.
in amongst all this, there's that there's that bit where Jillian calls her mum.
Yes.
And Jen's like, well, I've got the quote here. Stop saying that. Mum is what the intellectually frail use to refer to their parents. Your parents aren't your mum and da. We're your father and mother. Speak like you have an IQ over 60, please.
Over
Which is, I,
60.
I wanted her to be gone when I read that. I was like, do not keep this lady in my life. I can't stand her.
Elliot, do you call your parents mum and da or dad?
I used to call them Papa and Mama to piss them off because they didn't like that. Does that count?
That's if you have an IQ over 200, I think.
I mean, what do you call your parents?
I call my mum, and I call my dad Old Bean. Isn't that what everyone calls their dad?
I guess that average is because you've obviously got one that's IQ under 60. So I'm doing like how all the mobile ads these
Yeah,
days are
yeah,
about
yeah.
IQ
Oh, only
tests.
people over 60 can
Yeah,
solve this or whatever, yeah.
I think so. This averages your IQ at about 80. I think.
I don't think I've
Is
ever
that
told
good?
anybody out that obviously isn't in my family that I call my dad Old Bean, but it is pretty funny now that I say it out loud.
Yeah, it was like when I was 20, I think that like my mum's pet name for me was always like Boo Boo.
Mm.
And she used it like at college, and it was like the first time when my friends were like, "Why does she call you that?" And I was like, "Because I'd never really thought about that being an odd thing to do."
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you just sort of accept these things.
Um, can we talk about how Jen refers to Alexander and just like the utter vitriol in her internal monologue about Alexander and how delightful it is?
I love how it
Like,
ends.
oh,
It ends
fuck.
with that one line paragraph of "she resented Alexander," which is just the most
Yeah, no
unnecessary
shit.
addition in this entire
No shit,
story.
Jen. Yeah, sorry. I just have to, and we'll earn our E for explicit tag here, but I just have to read it out. She was beneath Y, who headed the circle, the business, the investigation, and main practice work established by Alexander, glowing Alexander, brilliant goddamn Alexander, her peer, who'd nearly done himself in fucking a spider and had still come out of the damn situation with the entire family loudly claiming how the dew of his cock tasted like the milk of paradise, and oh, could they please have a turn trying for a taste, metaphorically. It's just so good. Oh man, what a highlight.
Yeah, the chips on her shoulder and like the rampant insecurity in Jen is just it really carries this chapter to extraordinary heights. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it was after that line I think that it goes she resented Alexander and it was just like thanks Jen. We really
Mm,
we really needed you to spell that out for us.
it's very funny. Um so yeah, Jen goes to try and retrieve some power to try and do something against this attack, and she hasn't really figured out quite what. It doesn't seem, at least at this point. But this kind of starts the sequence of her fighting against the calcification that has gone on in the Belanger compound. Yeah, it's horrifying. It's like you feel the treacle that she's trying to wade through, and she does eventually, but you can see it's pretty close to just them all just kind of laying down and dying, seemingly. They don't
Yeah.
phrase it that way, but that's kind of what it seems like.
Well, Yeah, because I feel like this is sort of. I remember we talked in the last episode where we were like, I wonder what it sort of means that the Bellingers live in like a cultish compound like this.
Hmm.
And I guess this is sort of why Wildbow made that decision to show us a town like this for the Bellingers, because you're right. It's like it kind of makes sense that the Augurs were like, we're gonna, separate ourselves from society. So, because if you're off in the corner, presumably it's easier to like get more objective, like separate readings for futures. Like you keep yourself out of, don't shit where you eat sort of vibes.
Mm.
Um, and then also, it makes it easier to defend yourselves, because if you're out in the middle of nowhere, it's very easy to see if something's coming for you. But yeah, what's happened here is they could see that, but like they've made themselves completely unable to do anything from it. It's like they've separated themselves from humanity, and then that's caused them to like just kind of get stuck because they're alone. Like and this is, I feel like the chapter is setting the Bellingers up as like a bit of a metaphor for the wider sort of practice as a whole, or turning them into an exemplar of it, because it's like, yeah, they're isolated, sort of keeping themselves outside of society, and it's led to them falling behind, being caught off guard by changes. Like, Charles comes knocking on your door, like it's just they're just alone and fucking stuck. And that's, this is everything Pale is rallying against, is the idea that you go isolate yourselves and be separate from humanity.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. It's it's a plan that clearly hasn't worked for them, right? I mean, I guess it produced Alexander and Y, and that's the only real mark of success for it.
Well,
Um,
yeah, but like like reading this, you're like, no wonder Alexander emerged from this place with such a raging boner for cooperation and networking. Like, Alexander's whole thing was doing the opposite of what the Belanger family's commune is. Like, he built the BHI, and he's like, everyone fucking come here, and we're gonna work together and not be separate and intermingle. Like Alexander emerged from this place and is like, I'm gonna do not that.
mm,
And I
yeah,
mean,
yeah, that's why he's so good, I guess.
yeah, well, that was the part of Alexander we liked, is the part that looked at like, and this is sort of what I'm saying is like the Bellingers have been set up as like the opposite of Alexander's good parts. So it's like they're very much like all the bad parts of the practice. It really feels like they just embody.
Mm, yeah, yeah, 100%. It's grim. It's a grim place, isn't it?
Yeah, and it continues this hilarious trend that's kind of going on of like, the longer the story goes, the easier it's becoming to make the case that Alexander is a hero who did almost nothing wrong.
Yeah,
Like,
I mean, like, the more this story goes in general, the more I
yeah,
think that, considered how much worse things have gotten.
yeah, like Charles and Seth aren't really making the case for they were, good people right now. I mean, again, I would
No,
argue that
Charles and
forswearing
Seth
them.
deserve to be
Yeah,
forsworn.
I, I disagree, but it's easier to make that case than it was 6 arcs ago.
Yeah, yeah,
The Blue Heron Institute has obviously, I think we're really appreciating how good the Blue Heron Institute was when Alexander was in charge of it versus like Bristow and Mossa, and like,
yeah.
and now we're seeing where Alexander came from and how he was like doing the opposite of that. It's like, it's just getting easier and easier to be like, hey, Alexander was pretty good actually.
Yeah, all things considered,
Yeah.
Alexander was a pretty good practitioner with a,
Yeah.
capital G.
He had his problems, but at the end of the day, they were a lot more forgivable than most of his peers.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Um, and I mean, I guess that's like one of the fun things is I actually think Jen reminds me a lot of Alexander, in that I feel like her defining trait that we see a lot here is she really shares that ambition. Like, so much of all of the chips on her shoulder and all of her hang-ups in this chapter are essentially about the fact that she never got her chances and Alexander did. And I think that that's the one part of Jen's whole thing that I'm like, this is fair that you're so pissy about this. But like, she demonstrates she seemingly is a pretty good practitioner. She's just working with fuck all, and she's got that ambition. It kind of feels to me like the main thing that separates Jen and Alexander is essentially the gender they were assigned at birth. Like,
Yeah, I think that's pretty intentionally set up. I think
yeah,
Jen at least definitely thinks that,
yeah.
right?
So
And
Jen
it doesn't
definitely
seem
thinks that. Yeah,
untrue. We are inside her head, but it doesn't seem untrue from what we can see.
yeah. Like, I think it's at least a valid conversation to have. Is the idea that like if Jen had had the same opportunities as Alexander, would she have done very similarly? And I feel like there's room to say yes.
Yeah.
Which just makes it all the more funny because we've got to talk about this next bit. The whole thing where we learn about the rest of the Bellangers, like that you talked about, like we learn about her sexy cousin Owen and her bossy teacher Maxwell, and she's just thinking like, God, these guys suck. This family's so unfair. They've done terrible things to me. They didn't give me a chance to go out and prove myself. And she thinks this right after immediately yelling at Gillian for wanting to do something. And in fact, literally scaring away the spider that represents opportunity away from her. Like, this woman sees the spider of opportunity on her daughter, goes, no, I don't want that, and then walks off and thinks, fucking these people never give me any opportunities. Like, I can't with this woman. She's just she it's crazy that she's like, oh, I'm an augur, I see things good, and she missed this fucking, it's not even a metaphor, just this transparent pattern that she's uh, putting on her
Doing
own
the
daughter.
exact same thing.
It's wild.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
the fact that she transitions in less than 20 words from Gillian don't do things to fuck people never let me do things. I it's unfathomable that someone can be that stupid.
I think it's pretty funny.
It is.
Yeah, no, it's good. Yeah, it's interesting. Jen is a very interesting character. I think she was she's been developed in a very great way. I think it's
Oh,
wonderful.
I love to hate her. So she's so fun. Like, because the other thing that like I think she steps on a lot of like buttons that at least I very specifically have. Like the other one that really ticks me off. I hate people who are like this, where she resents anything that she's deemed as like childish. Like she's constantly bemoaning how her sight creatures have the names she gave them as kids, and they're stupid. And I mean, they are a bit stupid, but like, she writes off the video games the men play as like shitty, and it sounds like she was kind of right in that case. But like, she writes off the whole concept. She has a yell at Gillian about how being an adult means being miserable. Like, she, makes a Brett-like case for adulthood. And I think it's just like, it reminds me of that C.S. Lewis quote. Like, he said something like, there's nothing more immature than someone who's like scared of like, childish things or something. And like, that's just Jen to a T. She just is so afraid of things being good and fun. And she looks down on it, and it just pisses me off. I love it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's very fun. She's like specifically written for you to hate her, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, so some of the negatives approach, and Jen and her more senior family members try and fail to do absolutely anything about it.
That's not technically true. They do injure Freeman and Griffin, which I can support.
Sure. Yeah, true.
At least
Everyone's
Freeman.
a fan of that.
Griffin doesn't seem great, but he also seems kind of cool. Like, the stuff Griffin makes seems cool. I don't know about him as a person, but like, Freeman needs a bit of a whack to the face to wake up, so I can get behind this.
Yeah. But yeah, it's Jen tries her best, but she ends up combined with her two seniors being weaker than a 14-year-old boy with a rock.
Yeah.
But
that's Y's
might
fault.
Scream 14-year-old boy with a rock.
The petty interactions between the whole Belanger family and all this is just so good too. Like, it reminds me of that one family we got to talk about a lot in Deep Impact. Just like, they managed to let petty bullshit get in the way of important things, like every time. Like, every interaction Jen has with one of these people, like the guy who almost doesn't let her into the vault just because she doesn't have permission, and it's just like, dude, read the fucking room.
Yeah.
And I think like Maxwell comes in and he's like, do we really want to use our power? I don't want to be seen as taking sides. And it's like, mate, they're in the process of invading you. The fuck are you talking about taking sides?
Screaming, throwing a monkey kidnapping your children. Let's not take sides there. They might be the goodies.
Like, there's an argument to be made that not aggroing the Negatives to like not aggro Charles is a thing, but that's not taking sides. That's like,
that ship
for
has
mercy.
sailed, right? Clearly.
Yeah, like, that's about minimizing damage and like rolling over and exposing your belly. That's not taking a side. Um, yeah,
Yeah.
just I loved these guys. Just the petty bullshit that was getting in the way of like their compound is literally being burnt to the ground, and they're like,
They're like,
"Don't."
oh,
Yeah,
let's wait for why.
wait, this won't affect the vote on in the meeting on the 31st. It's like, who gives a
Yeah,
fuck?
yeah.
Oh, it's so good. And sorry, I'm seeing that lapsed classes is bringing it up in the chat, and we should talk about it.
Mm,
Jen's site is really fucking cool.
it is very fun.
Like, and it's why her kind of resenting how childish some of it is just like, you're an idiot because this is the coolest thing about you.
Yeah, she sees these animals that all represent different pillars of the practice, I suppose.
Yeah. Yeah, I made a list somewhere down here, but I ended up deleting it because we didn't need it for the episode. And also,
Mm.
I don't want to pronounce any of the names because they're all like Gaelic-y, Celtic-y, Irish-y stuff, and we've been burnt by those in the past. I don't. Whoever romanized that stuff had no idea what they were doing because the romanized versions of those words don't translate to how they're pronounced. It's crazy.
Yep, I think it makes sense for the spider to be called Sad Hubba.
Didn't you
I'm
say
sure
that's
that's how
not?
it's pronounced. Sad Hubba.
No, you sent me the Reddit comments pronounced like
No, there's a Reddit
Sive.
comment that says it's pronounced Slive, but I think it's Sad Hubba.
It's like I feel like the
No.
only the only word of this sort of origin that has made it into my lexicon here in Australia is the name Siobhan, which
Siobhan,
is
yes, 100%.
which
I
is
was just thinking the same thing. Like,
yeah.
that makes sense. Anything more than Siobhan, and I can't handle it.
Anyway, uh so something that happens to Jen as she's like, getting her ass handed to her by Josh is she's looking at Leonard and talking about how ugly he is. Everyone loves to mention how ugly Leonard is. I find it very fun. And she goes, when Solomon had made the seal and had gone to the effort of making certain things law, had this been the ugliness he'd been trying to avert? Which is just like such a hilarious bad take on the universe that like, oh, he's ugly, so he must be evil. And it's like, no, he just is ugly and evil. Like those two things don't necessarily correlate.
Mm.
But like the way Jen sort of leans on the seal here as like the benchmark for what is good and like this sentence reeks of the vibe of like, yes, the seal is good and we should all be wanting it to be exactly as it
To
is,
be.
like. And she's thinking about this right after she has the thought of like, oh, I made one bad decision, like getting married, and it trapped me in this family forever, and nobody should be like stuck with a decision like this and trapped forever. And then she looks at the Forsworn guy and she's like, fuck, that guy's ugly, he should be Forsworn forever.
He
Like
should have been trapped forever.
like, again,
Oh,
Jen's
Jen.
ability to just like think about something and then think about how bad it was for her and not connect those dots is just so delightful. Like she's simultaneously someone who hates the system but is completely oblivious to the fact that it's the system she hates, and she's like simultaneously propping it up wherever she can because it's the system, it's good, and just completely disconnected from how it's the system that's the problem. It's not Maxwell, it's not Owen, it's not Alexander, it's the whole like functioning format of this. And like she's like, oh, they never gave me a chance because I'm a girl, but now they're trying to take Jillian and give her a chance. What the fuck are you talking about that you don't want them to, like, they're trying to give Jillian the chance you never had. Wow, this lady.
Yeah. Just very unself-aware, I guess.
Yeah, I could just yell at Jillian for hours. She's just so fun as a POV.
But yeah, luckily Lucy shows up to save the day. She gets into a duel with Leonard, who cowardly decides to run away.
And I love the second Lucy shows up. It's perfect because Leonard is talking to Josh and he's like, these guys suck. Practitioners suck because they're not fighting to build things. They're just fighting to hold on to things,
Yeah.
especially the Kenneteers. They're not trying to build anything. And I was thinking, oh, fucking Lucy will kill you for that. Like literally the next line is Lucy being like, beg to fucking differ. And I was like, oh,
Yeah.
it's so perfect. Like,
Perfect entry line. Love it.
like
Yeah, Leonard is a piece of shit here. Like it's I mean, I guess we kind of knew this, but like he just is horrible.
he just sucks. Yeah.
He just undeniably sucks.
He's one of those rare villains where you don't see many of them in Pale, where there's no
Mm,
reason not to fucking hate this guy yet. Like, there's probably a tragic backstory somewhere there that would make me feel a little bit softer towards him. But at the moment, I just get to enjoy hating him for being an unrepentant piece of shit. And you got to treasure those sorts of people in Pale because we don't get them very often.
yeah, yeah. It'll be
So,
nice. I hope we don't get a redemption POV from Leonard.
it would be fun to sort of learn that actually, yeah, like Leonard just sucks. Actually, every now and then there is kind of someone who just sucks, and you got to figure out how to cope with them. Um, like sort of, we need to talk about Kevin style stuff, but I I also love he has this line where he's like, "Oh, Josh, if you want to fight me, you're gonna have to like do it yourself because the abyss likes me too much to be a tool to use against me." It's just like, man, the
if
abyss
the abyss,
sucks.
yeah, if the abyss likes you, that's not a good sign, mate.
Oh, see, I went the other way. I was like, oh, if the Abyss likes
Oh, if the
Leonard, the
abyss
Abyss
likes
sucks.
Leonard, it reflects poorly on the abyss. That's how
Yeah.
bad Leonard is. Wow.
Like, I know we know that, the Abyss was mistaken for hell and it seems to suck, but like, the fact that he's personifying the Abyss and it's a, yeah, it likes me, I was just like, man, Abyss, you could do better. Like,
Yeah,
nobody answered the Abyss in our shipping discussion question.
the abyss and who? Leonard.
Well, it's gonna
Yeah.
no, it's gonna be like another realmy type thing, like Ken. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Anyway, we'll get to that discussion question
Anywho,
later.
uh, we get a great moment of seeing Lucy through Jen's eyes here, and I always love seeing the characters through other people's eyes. Lucy just fully. It looks like a huge badass. Like she kicks fucking ass. It's awesome.
This is one of those things where it's like, if you were watching this, you're like, oh yeah, it makes sense that this is the girl who beat Anthem Ted, right? Because she comes across as so fucking powerful. Like the bit where the dogs all emerge, like where she tricks Leonard into being like, oh, you want to like friends into our one-on-one duel? I mean, I suppose like she just baits him so easily. She's like, well, let's do friends then. And then like all the dogs fucking emerge, and it's just like, oh, you're so fucked.
Yeah, it was
Um,
very good.
I also love that the dog pack have seemingly kind of like they're giving me the vibes of like they're like a collective group of dads for Lucy. Obviously like Lucy and the way she chews through father figures has been a thing. I love the idea that now she's got a big pack of dads who will fuck with anyone that tries to mess with her. Like
Mm.
it's just it's so fun that like her sort of this was something we talked about a lot in like arc 13. Like a lot of people used to talk about the idea of like Lucy at the end of the story being like the leader of the dog pack or whatever, but I'm finding myself way more interested in this vibe of like she's kind of the member of the pack, but it's that much more Yoldery relationship of they're kind of, yeah, her dads who will light anyone that
Yes.
fucks with her on
Yeah.
fire.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I think it's a fun vibes for Lucy's relationship to the dog pack for sure.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, so Leonard is defeated. Josh panics and pulls the ripcord, restoring his innocence.
This is a great like what the fuck sort of moment. Like it's just like, yeah, I
Yeah.
don't, not an escalation, but it's just like it fundamentally changes so much, and again catches the Kenneteers up to what we know about the Negateers. It's like one of those moments where you're like, oh, this is going to have implications.
Yeah, I mean, Lucy wants to chat to him. She's like, hey, we're not going to kill you, but you killed people, so we need to talk to you. He's
Yeah,
like, see ya, I'm outie. And yeah, then he gets whisked away by the alabaster, and it's just kind of like, huh, does he just get to go back? Like, I couldn't believe it. Like,
yeah, it's wild.
surely he used the Bedlamite script. Like, surely he's still going to have some. He's not going to know what these consequences are from, surely, but he must have the consequences, please.
I mean, uh, well, yeah, I guess we'll see. Like, it'll be an interesting thing to see. I assume the Kenneteers are going to follow up with Innocent Joss, and I'm interested to see how it goes.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm interested too. I think that when we see that chat, it will really see how much of a hypocrite is Charles. Is he
yeah,
just? I mean, like, the idea again in classic Charles fashion, the idea of a renounceable practice is great. and then we see, oh wait,
Yeah,
he's
it sucks
basically
in
just using
practice.
and discarding kids.
Yeah.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, and like Lucy brings up the other sort of valid criticism which is like Josh had a huge part in making a huge fucking mess here, and then he just gets to be like, nope, I'm out. Not dealing with
Yeah,
this. Too much.
yeah,
And like, as much as like I'm against forswearance because the idea of permanent consequences for anything I think is stupid. This is a massive overcorrection in that there can be no consequences. Like, I suppose
yeah,
you could argue losing the practice is consequences, but for Josh, losing the practice is losing Leonard. So it's a win-win, which is why he pulled the
yeah,
fucking cord.
and it also kind of means the negatives can just go all out, do fucked up shit, and knowing they can just avoid the consequences, and that's horrifying.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, for a lot of them, I almost see it going the other way. That like, I think Josh is one of the few who would have actually taken this. Like, and that was the topic
Mm,
in Nomi's one. Like, I think,
mm,
and I like if I could put my tinfoil hat on for a second, I think this is why Marcy chose Josh because
mm.
I reckon
To
they
lead the
wanted,
way on renouncing
yeah,
this.
they wanted someone who would fold the first time things got serious because I think this is like the way to raise the stakes for the others. Like they were having
Yeah.
fun going and doing their raids on practitioner houses, and that's great for them. But now it's also like it's going to hit them, like their mortality is sort of going to hit them, or the impermanence of their practice is really going to sink in. And I can't help but feel that this is going to cause them to escalate even further. This is why I think Marcy, I think this is exactly what Marcy wanted Josh to do.
Mm, yeah.
Um, but yeah, no, so it's going to be interesting to keep exploring exactly what this means because yeah, the, Charles's whole undoing of the practice and resetting your innocence thing is just like there's so many ways it can go. I think that's why it's so fun as a mechanic he's made because it's just like I see what you're going for, but there's 100 ways this can go wrong as well as go right.
Mm,
Uh,
yeah.
Also,
Definitely.
just the way the alabaster does just show up and it's like yoink. I was like really glad because part of me was like, wait, is there just going to be an innocent kid sitting in the middle of this town now? Like that's a problem. Um, so at least the alabaster had the decency to like clean up that part of the mess. But it is just like this thing's so fucked. I was just like, come on, alabaster, like you just. It's so shitty that she's doing stuff like this now. I don't know.
Yeah.
Nothing new here, but I'm disappointed in the alabaster.
Well, no, I think it's interesting that like it. This gave me real vibes of Charles just kind of has them all under his thumb, right?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I think this is something the alabaster sort of would volunteer for. This is well within her realm, and she signed on for all this. But it's like, yeah, under his thumb in the sense that it was so easy for him to get them all on side for this fucking plan he's cooking. Yeah.
Yeah.
Like they're all happily taking second seat to Charles, and yeah, I guess this
Yeah.
is the first time we're seeing them actually get work as a part of that, as opposed to just letting Charles do more of the work.
Yeah. Um, but unfortunately for our POV, it turns out Josh is not the only missing child.
Yeah, because Verona was irresponsible and didn't do what she was told by Jen, the
Didn't
adult
obey
in the
elders.
situation.
No. How dare she? But
I
yeah,
I love
this
how
is
this unfurls for Jen, like
yeah,
just at the moment of like, wait, that's Verona. She's not taking care of my daughter. Because part of me was like, oh, you expected that was happening?
yeah. I was really surprised that we ended basically on this line of "Where's my daughter?" Because it's like it's such a cliffhanger for a interlude, right? I was kind of
Mm.
expecting, well, I don't know, like that means that lends it an importance that I think means, oh, what the fuck's going to happen? Is she going to be a hostage of the Negatiers? Is she going to become a Negatier herself to escape the Belanger shit show, which I think is possible?
Yeah, because earlier on in the chapter, it is established that like Jen realizes the negatives aren't going for the heads of the family; they're going for the kids. So
Yeah.
then there's this moment of oh shit, Jillian is one of the kids. Um,
Hmm.
yeah, I feel the implication is that at least she's been nabbed. I
Yeah, I
guess.
think so.
Yeah, I don't know. I said a similar thing to you right after the chapter ended. I was like, if Seth is at all smart, which I think he is in his own way, I would expect that a recruitment drive is partially in order. Like, I feel like part of what he wanted to do here was pull kids out of the Belanger camp, which is a little bit out of the frying pan into the fire, but I can see the idea.
Yeah. Um, it'll be interesting, but we'll have to find that out next week, I guess.
Yeah, I, yeah, I really liked this chapter. It just, I felt like it had everything going. Like the chaos of the fight was
Yeah.
fun. Jen was a frustrating delight of a protagonist for the chapter, and there was so much like it. It felt like the Bellingers were being used as examples to kind of ridicule so much of what this story has been making fun of, like practice for being. Like it's just on every level. I thought this chapter was doing really fun stuff.
Mm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, only one chapter, unless let me just refresh the page and see if the new ones. Nope. So instead, why don't we talk about some Pale predictions, Elliot? Predictions that the community has left in our Pale Predictor form, which is linked in the show notes down below. And I'm going to start. This is a prediction from the first Haruspecs, which I absolutely loved. Rook is intentionally allying with Charles because she knows that she loses wars and she's self-aware about it. Oh, it's so good. If it ends up being true, it'll be so delightful.
I can't imagine it's true,
I
but
know,
it's
but
so
it's so
fun.
cheeky.
Like, yeah, when the first Terra Specs brought this up, I was like, please put that in Prowl Predictor, because especially if it is right, they
You've
deserve
got to
all
get
the
the points
prediction
for it.
points.
Yeah,
Because
for sure.
it's just so funny an idea that Rook is like, well, I always lose. These guys suck. I'm going to team up with them. I mean, surely karma kind of works. So, karma knows that's what you're doing, so it's to work like that. But
Well, that's why Rook has to be so sneaky about it, so that
yeah,
nobody, not even Karma, knows.
even the spirits aren't aware. That's fair. Yeah, I mean, like this is what's fun about Rook is like she was really introduced to us with such a gotcha when she turned out to be Mrs. Best Friend, who was an ally to the Kenneteers. That like she's just so ripe for tinfoiling because you can't. It's like fundamentally woven into everything about her that you can't trust what she's setting herself up to be. It's just fun.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
And then I've pulled out a prediction from a bird, which I thought was equally sort of in this fun realm of just a
Mm.
bird thinks that actually it was Kennett that abducted Gillian and maybe some of the other Belgers.
That's psychotic, Bird. I love it. Can you imagine? Oh my god, I can see Verona doing this. I don't think Lucy would stand for it.
I see. I don't know. Like, I
Do you
mean,
think? It's a bit too Verona, isn't it?
oh yeah, but I feel like the case can be made. It's like, hey, Lucy, look at this place. Let's have
Yeah.
these kids not be here. Like, and I think it would be a volunteer thing, and I can see Gillian being like, yeah, and they can all go stay with Raquel in Verona's
Mm.
house. Like, I don't know. It seems unlikely to me. This is very similar to the other prediction. Where I'm like, this doesn't seem likely, but it's very fun, and if it's true, you deserve all the points.
Yeah. Yeah. That will be delightful if it's true. I'm dubious, but I am also very excited to be proven wrong.
Exactly.
All right, Elliot. Time for a discussion question, I think. We were
Yes.
running a discussion question this past 3 days, 4 days.
I know the week we
So thanks.
the week we switched to weekly again, we end up cutting it in half. Although I think of all the discussion questions to get cut in half, this one I can live with this being it.
Yeah. But yeah, this discussion question was: what other surprising ships in Pale would you find delightful? Now, which ones did I like the most?
I got to call out the first one you'd pulled out here, which I
Hmm.
agree is one of the favorites, which is I'm easily impressed suggested Luna and Jude as a ship.
Yes, this is the best one in my opinion. This is the one that I look at and I think, oh, this could be very fun.
Yeah, very surprising, but also the more I think about it, the more I'm like, yeah, I could see it.
Yeah. Yeah. I think the thing that sold me on this one was like the arc of Jude kind of learning to value the humanity of others. This would be a perfect beat for it, and I just loved it.
Yeah. Again, it's odd, surprising, but I see it, and I think it would be delightful. So
Yeah.
yeah, checks all the boxes.
Um, another one that I thought was really strong was Jen and Brett. The dream team bonding over disobedient daughters was the I think the main bonding point. That this was from Waterfall, who said this one, and
Now
I
I
love it.
gotta. This is so unfair to Jen. I know I just spent what are we at 45 minutes ragging on Jen and everything she stands for, but wait, this gives me the same vibes as when people used to joke about Edith and Brett getting together, where I'm like, oh come on, neither of them deserve that.
That's what's so good about it. That's what's so good about it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely like the Jen Brett conceptual overlap is for sure there, and which is why Verona was the one that she talked to for most of the chapter.
Yeah.
I liked Hobo Demon's answer was very interesting. So this one was Tashlit and Thunder Bay, which I got the vibe from Hobo Demon's answer
Yeah.
that they were thinking less like romantic shipping and more just like these two should be
Friend
friends.
shipping.
Yeah, which I think is valid. I
Yeah, I
probably
like
do
that.
more friend shipping than I do relationship shipping when I
Yeah,
talk about this sort of stuff.
the thing that I think doesn't track for relationshipping here is Thunder Bay. I don't think is down to earth enough for Tash. I feel like Tash would want somebody a bit more down to earth, and maybe that applies for friend shipping as well. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely the like conceptual synergy between the two of like Tashlet is a sea monster. She who drowns in the moonlight, is all about drowning and being underwater. So like, there's definitely, I think these two would get along. But like, you're right. I don't know if Thunder Bay is like a personality enough
Yeah,
to be more than just a mate.
yeah,
Sorry, a
yeah,
friend.
for sure.
Poor phrasing. It's my Australian leaking out.
Oh, Elliot.
Yeah.
So yeah, which other ones do I like? Oh, TFS 5454 wanted to ship Jasmine with somebody, and ended up going with a dog of war. And then in the comments, I think the Anthem and Jasmine ship kind of set sail, which I
Yeah.
thought was pretty good as well. That's one that I really like too.
I think we talked about that back when she first kind of kicked his ass as like,
Yes.
and yeah, I mean, it feels like there's a lot to unpack before Jasmine and Anthem can kind of actually be a thing. Whereas like Grandfather, who was the dog of war that kind of got first billing, if you had to pick one, I suppose, it is one of the things where I was like, I can kind of see that, but also there's a huge obstacle to overcome there, which is like Lucy's relationship with the dogs. Like it's a very very odd thing to go from like whatever you want to classify Lucy and the dog's relationship now to like some sort of stepdad or step boyfriend energy. Like could be fun to explore though. Like that could be a weird hump in a fun way. But yeah,
Yeah.
I think TFS 5454 opened by saying they just want Jasmine to find someone and be happy, and that is very true. Like I agree with how they like 100% started this question, which is just like Jasmine needs someone. Who can we find?
Yeah. Yeah, it feels like it's a, a a desperate search for a partner
Yeah,
that doesn't quite work.
if only the handsome man would come back.
Yeah, they were a perfect pair.
TFS 5454 also suggested Ken and Soot Sleeves, which I just want to say I can't believe you do Soot Sleeves like that. That is so unfair to her. Ken sucked. Maybe like KT or was it Nettie, the other kind of cool one? Like Nettie was a bit neurotic, I think, but like she seemed cool. But Ken as an individual unit, I was like, oh, don't do that to Soot Sleeves.
Yeah. I think Soot Sleeves deserves better.
Yeah.
So Propaganda Pagoda, sorry, called out one that I think was genuinely confirmed in story. Verona plus Kyle, who would be, a friend relationship.
Is it? I actually wanted to bring this up. Like, if I could just put my boomer hat on for a second. Like, what is the term we should sort of use for like what Verona had with Jeremy or that sort of thing? Like, because obviously
Pals.
relationship is not it. Yeah,
Mates.
I guess
Maybe mates. I like mates.
Yeah, I'm just going to struggle with that, as was established a few minutes ago. Yeah, friends with benefits is too wordy though. I want like a quicker, shorter term for just sort of saying, uh, physically involved, but there's no romantic shit. Yeah, I mean, fuck
Yeah.
buddy works actually. Anyway,
It does, although it feels a bit weird when we're
it feels
talking about
uncomfortable to
14-year-olds.
use it in the
Yeah,
exactly what I was just thinking.
yeah.
Friend relationship is probably the closest I've heard, but that feels like
Trim.
it's emphasis on the romantic part. It feels like the opposite.
Yeah. I don't know.
Anyway, so
Yeah.
throw your suggestions in Reddit in our Discord.
Well, this is our new discussion question, Elliot. What is the
No.
technically correct term?
Yeah. All the people who helped me understand aromantic stuff like a couple of months ago when that first came up and educated me, please continue to do so.
Mm-hmm. Trimblemble, Elliot. Not just a random collection of sounds, but actually a user who left a response to our discussion question. Who said Snowdrop plus Cherry Pop as a Steven Universe-esque combined giant girl. Which, if you haven't seen Steven Universe, which I also haven't, I think the idea is like two people who are good friends can merge together into one different entity that has more powers. I don't quite know exactly how it works.
Okay, damn it, because I thought you had translated it for me, so I'm upset to learn that you also don't know what you're talking about.
I know 80% what I'm talking about. I'm pretty sure that's it because, one, Garnet appears in Multiverses Brawl or whatever, and that's where I get most of my information. Garnet is one of these. Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's like a Pacific Rim style thing where they combine into two people controlling a mech. I don't know how it works. They're like,
if I can,
one of them controls the hands and one controls the feet. I don't quite know.
if I can turn it into a different example, no one's going to understand.
Sure.
My sister watches a lot of Dragon Ball Z. Like, she just kind of finishes it and starts it again. And they do a fusion thing in that where two people fuse into like a super version of themselves where their minds kind of meld, kind of like Pacific Rim. So I think it's like that.
Yeah.
I've seen the same thing. Clawford saying the same thing in the chat. Cool. I'm gonna keep picturing it like Dragon Ball Z fusion, which is just feels like a weird thing for me to know about because I don't know much about that series.
Anyway, the final answer we got was Beleg who's back on a ship that I'm pretty partial to, but they've expanded it a bit. It's the Noraverti ship.
Nailed it.
Which is Nora
so this is
plus
Nora
Avery plus Liberty.
Yes, so a thruple idea, which is just really doesn't feel like Avery's vibe.
Nope.
But you know, I do think like it would be funny to sort of for somebody to pitch that to Avery. I'd love to see Avery's reaction to somebody suggesting she try something like that.
There's some pretty obvious problems with this, right? The biggest among which is Janine is excluded for some unknown reason.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
But yeah. So Elliot, why don't you tell everyone what's our discussion question for next week?
So yeah, this week's discussion question is a bit of an outdated reference, but we're going with it nonetheless. We're wanting to hear the snowdropified version of some of your favorite songs. So remember a couple of weeks ago, Avery suggested she torture Raquel by getting Snowdrop to sing some of her favorite songs.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to hear what you think that would look like. How would Snowdrop butcher your favorite songs?
Yeah, and we will each pick our favorite and sing them on the show next week. Yeah. Right, Elliot?
I mean, I'm willing to try, but anyone who knows me knows how little I listen to music. So not only can I not sing, I don't know songs. So I'll probably be trying to guess the melody.
Yeah.
But that might just enhance the snowdroppiness
that'll make it
of
better,
it all.
I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, leave your beautiful songs for us in our discussion thread, which we linked in the show notes down below. In that discussion
thread, duet. Sorry, somebody do a duet. We can sing it together.
Oh yeah, that's good. But yeah, in those show notes you can find links to all the great things about the show. Like, I think you can find a link to our Pale Predictor form where you can leave your own predictions about what's going to happen next. Is Jillian going to become a Negateer or a Kenneteer? Get your answers in now.
Yeah. Also, sorry, we need to change. I forgot to mention. Gillette is like officially the 5th Kenneteer now, right? Based on how she acted in this chapter. Like, so now all the jokes have to be about people being the 6th Kenneteer.
Well, no, I still think the jokes are about the 4th Kenneteer because Snowdrop is just a familiar and just another. So it doesn't count.
Another. Doesn't count. Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. Okay, cool. Yeah, when Gillette's just a fetch, so just another doesn't count. Yeah, just still looking for 4th.
Pale reflection.
Oh boy.
Ding, ding, ding! Ring the bell. We said it. We said it.
Yeah. So don't forget to check out our Twitter. We post memes there. We
Every
will also post
darn
this
day.
episode there. So if you're listening to this, you're probably thinking, "Why is this out so early?" It's on the Twitter. I'm going to put it there now.
Yeah. If you want more information about all the great shows on the Duff Media Network, you can go to duffmedia.com. It's the only place where you can get your fix of everything Duff Media.
Yeah. And if you want to hear more cool speak like that from Ruben, head on over to patreon.com/doofmedia. He can't afford to be that cool without our patrons supplying the mics.
It's so true. Speaking of affording to be cool, head to patreon.com/Wildbird. Make sure Wildbird can keep affording to be cool, because that's what Patreon's for. Okay, everyone knows it.
Yeah, well, we're heading into winter in Canada, right? So it is about to be very cool over there. So he needs money to, I don't know where my brain is so fried.
You really,
End of
as soon
episode.
as it hits 9 p.m.